Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom. Tom, how's it going?
Wow, Tony, you really are we in the hurry up today? It wasn't much of a power pause there. I figured this was like for Iowa we would have an extra long power pause, 3-4 minutes maybe. Really no? Okay, well, good to get all the excitement out of the way early this week because we have a football game to talk about.
Yeah, I just want to get through this week. The quicker we do stuff, the sooner we get through this week, and we don't have to talk about Iowa anymore after Saturday afternoon, Saturday early evening, Saturday afternoon. And then we can just let Iowa go until they somehow win out and make it to the Big Ten championship game, having scored touchdowns in only half of their games somehow. So that is the joy that we're all going to experience, and I can't wait. And so let's just get to it. This is, Tom, our preview show. Iowa versus Ohio State. Iowa's got a record. Is it like 3-3, Tom? I believe that's what it is. I'm taking Iowa so seriously.
You can tell because even their record is just kicking field goals.
And the funny thing is, like, I've looked up more Iowa stats than any Ohio State opponent over the last 20 years because it's incredibly interesting. I wonder if this is how is this how you get Bitcoin? You do all of this data mining and you find little bits and new things about how Iowa is terrible at stuff. Is that data mining? Is that similar?
The trend chart for Iowa football has looked a lot like the trend chart for Bitcoin in the year of our Lord 2022. So yes, that's probably not a terrible comparison.
Buttcoin. Yeah, Tom, I've got a couple of things here for you. Before we get into this and dive into this, I've got some, and it's not old-timey Ohio State players. I've just got some questions for you about Iowa's offense to see if you can get these. Some of these are true and false. Some of these, see if you can guess. Who has more 20-yard receptions this year, Iowa or Emeka Egbuka?
That is a tremendous question. Iowa has, I believe, 4 20-yard receptions. I think Emeka Egbuka might have substantially more 20-yard receptions. Doesn't he have like 10? So I'm gonna say Emeka Egbuka, and I'm gonna say Emeka Egbuka comfortably.
Actually, Tom, Iowa has, I believe, 14 20-yard receptions. Remember, 20 yards. This isn't 30 yards, but Iowa has 14. Emeka has only 13. So
I was close on Emeka, and I must have been thinking of 20-yard rushes because there was one where they had only 4.
That's
20. Okay, all right.
Now here's another one for you, Tom. Let me see. Iowa has 5 scoring plays of 20 or more yards this season. How many of those belong to the offense?
I'm going to say 3 of them belong to the offense because they've had at least 2 pick sixes. So I'm going to say 3 offense, 2 defense.
2 offense, 2 defense, and I believe 1 special teams. So almost. Tom, do you know the longest touchdown pass this season for Iowa?
Would you accept the answer that no, I don't know the longest touchdown pass for Iowa? I suspect that you would not, so I will say the longest touchdown pass for Iowa this year is 27 yards.
Lower.
23 yards.
Lower.
No. No, I don't think I want to go any lower. Why don't you just tell me?
Good answer. 21 yards. Yeah. Here's a good one for you, Tom. This is a true or false. Over the last 2 regular seasons for Iowa, the Hawkeyes have more drives of lost yardage than drives of 50 yards or more.
Boy, spiritually that feels true. And if it's false by like 1. And disappointingly, the answer is going to be like 6-5 or something like that, I'm sure. So I will say it is true. They have lost yardage on drives more often than they've had 50-yard drives.
It is sadly false. They have lost yardage on only 33 drives, and they have 35 drives of 50 yards or more. So the Iowa offense is much better than people give it credit for. They gain 50 yards more often than they lose yards. So pretty good if you think about it only in that way.
I should have known that you were going to frame things in a way that were, just barely positive for Iowa, and I was going to fall into the trap of going, well, they're terrible at everything, so I'm sure everything is bad for them. This is a me problem. This is me not anticipating exactly how you were going to do this to try and make me feel like a doofus. So that's on me. And Tony, great news. I feel like a doofus. So
Good. I got one last one. Maybe this will make you feel even worse. We'll see. This is true or false. Iowa's season high total offense this year is 351 yards.
boy, that feels true. And now I'm wondering, did they get all the way to 351? They must have. I'm going to say true.
It is false. 337 yards against Nevada is their season high.
And for people who are not familiar, Nevada is one of the worst teams in the entire country. Their head coach just left Nevada for what was functionally a lateral move to Colorado State because Nevada won't invest in football at all. And so, yes, they are one of the worst teams in the entire nation. And 337 yards, you say, wow, that is, it's too much, Tony. It's altogether too much.
There are so many, and we have spent all week talking about this terrible Iowa offense that really isn't going to factor into this game, which is, I guess, maybe the irony of talking about and previewing an Iowa football game is you spend so much time like looking at this car accident. Meanwhile, it's like, yeah, but you're on a train and you're getting where you're going. Like this car accident has nothing to do with you. It's at a crossroads and we're on a train going this way, but you can't stop staring at it. And yet you've got this Iowa defense. And then I guess to start this preview show, not that we haven't started it, but let's talk about this Ohio State passing game against the Iowa pass defense, which, as Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson have said all week, they make you work all the way down the field. You got to be patient. You can't take shots, and if you do, you better be careful because what looks like a one-on-one 50-50 ball, they will get there and turn it into like a 66-33 ball type of thing. But also, Tom, this isn't really when was the last time Ohio State threw a 50-50 ball that you remember? Like not in the red zone in like a back shoulder type of thing, or even then, I mean, how often have you seen midfield 50-50 balls from this team?
Not very often. And I think part of that is just Ohio State's receivers do a pretty good job of getting open. So you're not, if there's not a defender within 3 yards of you, well, your odds are significantly better than 50-50 of catching the ball. But and I think that's also a function of that CJ Stroud doesn't feel the need to take real crazy chances. I mean, there have been balls where, the guy isn't necessarily tightly covered, but, you have to throw it over the hands of the outstretched defender. I think there was one in either the Wisconsin game or the Notre Dame game like that, where there was an underneath defender. It's not really a true 50-50 ball, though. So I think the answer to you is, boy, they're really not throwing that many because generally their receivers are open enough that it's way better than 50-50. They're going to catch it.
Here's a couple of stats for you. Iowa has allowed a nation low 3 pass plays of 30 yards or more. They're tied with like 3 other teams. They are the only team in the nation that has not allowed a completion of 40 yards or more. And to me, those are pretty significant numbers. Now, granted, they're not playing any passing offenses, but still, you would think, well, you get a couple in there, and it hasn't.
Well, I think what really the key is if you're not playing anyone who can throw the ball on Saturdays, then man, those weekday practices are really preparing you for those games very, very well. That is really setting you up for success. You're reading through these stats and I'm going, Iowa's a really fun team because you could tell me the stats, 3 pass plays of 30 yards or more all season, 0 pass plays of 40 yards or more. Be like, this could be the Iowa offense. This could be the Iowa defense. Like that would be a fun game. Like, is this Iowa's defense good or Iowa's offense bad? And the answer sometimes might be both. The Iowa defense is just all week we've heard from Ohio State coaches, Ohio State players. I talked to Ross Fulton on the episode of the morning show that ran on Friday morning. It's just everyone says the same thing, which is they're really good at what they do. They just do what they do. And because they do what they do and they're really good at what they do, they're just going to wait for you to make a mistake, and it is just, they're going to keep everything in front of you, everything in front of them, make you just march down the field, and you've got it. If you can consistently execute, you just keep the chains moving. But they're going to play they're going to play two deep safeties and keep everything in front of them and make you be methodical. And when you're playing a schedule of Big Ten West teams, how many of those teams can't consistently execute in the pass game? Well, a bunch of them. So then they make the mistake, they get off the field, ta-da. Or you get down to the red zone and the field is compressed, and then you end up kicking a bunch of field goals, and then Iowa can kind of keep up because they can kick field goals. So yeah, that's the general gist of the Iowa defense. Is they're very good at what they do. They just don't let you hit the big one, and you just have to be patient. This is probably not going to be a very fulfilling or exciting game for Ohio State fans. Ohio State will win. Ohio State might end up covering. I mean, we'll see. We'll get to score predictions later, but they should win somewhat comfortably, but it's also probably not going to be a game you particularly enjoy watching as an Ohio State fan.
Yeah. When you look at, I think we've talked about this week, when you look at similar offenses to Ohio State in terms of like a passing offense against Iowa, you see Purdue has success against them. They've since 2017, I'm just looking here, like the only time Purdue wasn't close to 300 yards passing was in 2017. They threw for 229 and a 24-15 win. Like since then they're averaging over 300 yards passing. So they're doing that without any running game. Ohio State has a running game, and Iowa's going to have to make a decision. And is that to stay with your two high safeties and then see if Ohio State can just patiently move and then hope your linebackers, Jack Campbell and Seth Benson, can make the tackles and Riley Moss can hold up. And right now the corners aren't playing as well as they did last year, so there are issues there. But you look at Illinois rushed for 200 yards against them. Michigan, they held Michigan to 172 yards, but would they again? Maybe not. Michigan very conservative in that game, and they were up comfortably for a while, so they could be. But when I see Illinois rush for 200 yards, and these teams are doing this without Illinois can't really throw the ball. Rutgers threw for 300 yards on them, not being able to run the ball. So you see, this is a defense that has given up 200 yards rushing and 300 yards passing to one-dimensional teams. Now you've got a two-dimensional team, and I think Ohio State will be able to run it. And I still think Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson are going to draw some big plays up offensively. I think that 40-yard pass, I would be pretty surprised if it doesn't happen for the first time this year.
It's interesting that you mentioned Illinois running for 200 and Rutgers running for 300, because there was a note in the game notes from Jerry Emig and Mike Bassford this week that Ohio State is the only team in the country averaging 200 yards rushing and 300 yards passing in a game. So, yeah, maybe. I think the other thing that Iowa will do is they will, if they can keep their offense on the field and pick up a first down here or there, they're going to just really slow the pace down. This is when we talk about complementary offense with what the Iowa defense wants to do. The Iowa defense wants you to make you take time going down the field. They want their offense to run the ball, take time off the clock, shorten the game, fewer possessions, all that kind of stuff. Because then the game's close at the end. If you're not punching in touchdowns and you only get 9-10 possessions instead of 12 or 13, well, then the score is closer, and that's when you end up in the 20-17 kind of games. Those are the games that Iowa tends to win. When Iowa wins, they win those games. They don't win a lot of 49-42 kind of shootouts. So there is definitely a way Ohio State moves the ball and scores. Ohio State's been so good in the red zone that it would be pretty meaningful to me if they were good in the red zone again this week. I think that's the two things that are going to determine, whether this game is a close, somewhat unsatisfying 3-touchdown win for Ohio State, or whether this is Ohio State really annihilating Iowa. Is number one, Ohio State in the red zone, because they're going to get to the red zone, and the question is it 7s or is it 3s down there? And number two is, does the defense force a turnover? Get a quick score, get a pick six, give Ohio State's offense a bunch of short fields. I mean, there is a way this snowballs on Iowa and it ends up 50 something to single digits. But barring that, it feels like this is going to be Ohio State maybe covers, but everyone kind of walks away and going, well, let's never talk about that again.
Well, and Iowa is fourth nationally in touchdown percentage allowed in the red zone at like 33%. So they've allowed 5 touchdowns in 15 attempts, which is really, really good. And Ohio State coming in scoring on 27 of 29 red zone attempts. Amazingly, Tom, UCF leads the nation. They have allowed 11 scores to opponents and 21 attempts to the red zone. Is that just terrible opposition? Some of that has to be terrible opposition.
Some of that has to be terrible. I mean, that you're scoring like half of your red zone trips. That's you played a team with a bad red zone offense and also a bad kicker, or you had a couple of games where opponents ended the game. It was a 3-score game and they ended the game in the red zone, and so you got a couple cheapies like that. Yeah, that's one that I don't think I've ever seen a team go a full season with like a 50% red zone scoring percentage allowed. Touchdowns, sure. Scoring percentage, no. That tells me at least as much about the teams they've played as it does about them, because that is not a stat you'd expect to continue.
Yeah, I'm just looking, scrolling through the years. Last year, the best was 62%. A few years back, there's like a 61.6, but it's all like 63, 64. So being at 52% right now, like the start of the year or halfway through the year, is very impressive. Not that this is a UCF show, but also just 5 touchdowns allowed in those 21 attempts. That's pretty crazy. But this is an Iowa show, so we do need to get back to the Iowa Hawkeyes. Let's spend a little bit of time, the last bit of time that we have, talking about this Iowa offense, Tom, because I have jotted down so many numbers. I don't even know where all of these numbers are anymore. And it's like, which numbers are these? I don't even know anymore. And like, Iowa has 4 drives of 70 yards or more this season. Ohio State has 26. The Buckeyes have had 4 drives of 70 yards or more in 4 of their 6 games this year. There are, Iowa only had 5 drives of 60 yards or more this season. And there are all kinds of these stats where this year they've only had 10 drives of 50 yards. They, 1 drive of 80 yards this season. Ohio State has had 3 or 4 90-yard drives. And yes, it is unfair to compare Ohio State's offense to Iowa's offense, but the vastness of the distances between the two, like Iowa's last 300-yard passing game was November 23rd of 2019. The Buckeyes have thrown for 300 yards 21 times in that span. That's been exactly 1,000 passes for Ohio State. They've thrown 101 touchdowns in that span. Iowa has thrown 25 touchdowns in that same time.
Yeah, I like the fact that I did the show earlier this week where I had 35 completely insane stats about Iowa football and how just unbelievably bad they are on offense. And I was like, wow, this has been exhaustively researched. I couldn't possibly come up with anything more that expresses how bad. And you've come up with completely different stats that prove the exact same point, which is, how are these teams playing the same sport? Like, these are teams that are nominally in the same conference, theoretically at the same level of the sport. And yet it's like, what? How? What? That's not possible. That's like one team is doing curling and the other team is playing croquet. Like, those are not the same thing. What are we doing here? You have to try to be this bad. It is like, you cannot possibly do this accidentally. All season, you were halfway through the regular season, and if you start a drive on your 20-yard line, there's functionally a 0% chance you're going to score a touchdown. That is insane. That is like almost impossibly bad. It's mind-boggling and completely indefensible. Unlike the Iowa offense, which is the exact opposite of indefensible.
I'll throw one more at you. Iowa has 11 drives of 70 yards or more in the last 2 regular seasons. Ohio State had 5 70-yard drives in the first half of the Michigan State game. Just 11 drives over the course of 18 games now. Like it's so beyond, and you're exactly right. This is done on purpose, and it's nobody's fault. And we're not throwing blame on anybody, but it is there's and the thing is, like, you just have to stop. Like, I got to stop looking for all of these stats because there's something new every single time, especially when you compare it to Ohio State. You need to compare it to some like normal offense, and it would still not be good. This is another level of bad from this Iowa offense, and it doesn't matter if they're throwing the ball, they're running the ball, whatever it is, it's all very, very difficult. And as Ronnie Hickman said this week, our job is to get off the field on third down, because if they get another first down, we're going to lose like 3 more minutes of offensive possession. And if they're picking up, if they pick up a 3rd and 7, it's almost devastating. You're like, how could we let this happen?
It's so funny because you're talking about all these, 11 drives of 70 yards or more in the last 18 games. It reminds me of the Urban Meyer's old plan to win, and he had the chart where, if you start a drive on the 50, you're, 70% likely to score a touchdown, and if you start your drive inside your own 10, you're like 3% likely, whatever the numbers were. On Iowa's chart for that, it's like 0%, 0%, 0%, 2%, 5%, like, oh. And the really gross thing is that's going to incentivize you as an opposing coach to punt, play field position. She's like, well, we'll just punt it away and they'll not be able to do anything with it. And there's functionally 0 chance they're going to score. So then we'll just punt and play field position and don't give them a short field. And it just drags you down into this absolute, it's like playing a football game in molasses. Like, this is not fun for anyone. And this is nominally a thing that people are doing for fun. They're paying money to go watch, and it's like, you're dragging people down into this miserable slog of a game, and you're losing a bunch of them. Like, this is awful. This is the worst of both worlds.
It's like asking for a price check at the dollar store. You're like at the register, and then you argue about it, and then you get in. Then you there are like upset with the people arguing about it, and then you get into this whole dollar store argument, and it's like, great, now I'm playing Iowa's version of football, and I've punted from the 38. That was going to be like one of my bold predictions, was that Ryan Day would punt from inside the 40, but in this game, I don't know that that's bold, because like that's, Tom, even you have to admit, punting from like the 38 on a 4th and 7 and pinning Iowa at the 5 is a higher percentage play of getting the ball back in a better position than going for it on 4th and 7, and maybe you get it, maybe you don't. And then nothing bad is going to happen if you punt it and pin them at the 5. Although you can also know nothing bad is going to happen if you go for it and don't get it, and now they've got the ball at your 38. So yeah, maybe it's half a dozen of one, 6 of the other.
I was going to say, oh no, we've gone for it and failed, and now Iowa has a short field, and they're like 6% likely to put some kind of points on the board. This is a devastating turn of events. Like, just, this is one of those, like, you got to just play your game, and just, there are bigger fish to fry than Iowa. So Ohio State just needs to go out and just, handle their business, get out to a lead. If you get out to a lead, the game is functionally over unless you turn the ball over. If Ohio State takes care of the ball, paint me a scenario, Tony, where Ohio State takes care of the ball, and they finish, I don't know, -2 in turnovers or better, -1 in turnovers or better. Paint me this scenario where Iowa wins this game.
Iowa would have to return every kickoff for a touchdown, and then go for 2, so that every 7 points they give up, they score 8. And that's about it. There's really, like, they would have to play so much beyond what we have seen. And now we have seen them do that before in person. We've seen them play beyond what they were. But that wasn't a pathetic offense like this is. That 55 points that Iowa scored in 2017 was not their season high. Let's not forget. Like, they had some ability. They don't have ability here. And so without turnovers, they don't have the ability to drive down the field. This would be a monumental defensive collapse. That's what this would take. This would take, I don't even want to mention names about who would need to be at safety at this point, and you'd need to have both of those guys at safety, and then oh no, here comes Jamario O'Neal's music, something like that, where just all of these, even I was not even Donnie Nicky. Donnie Nicky was a very good player for Ohio State, but he's a meme basically at this point. But a starting meme on a national championship team, but you would have to have so many things go wrong and just complete failure on defense. And we haven't seen any signs of that to this point. You'd need a complete failure on defense and a complete, what in the heck was this offensively for the Iowa offense? And then you might have a game because you still have Ohio State's offense going on. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it feels like Ohio State just has to kick, 5 field goals in the red zone and 5 field goals in the red zone, and Iowa gets a score on defense, and then they have the one drive, and then, they block a punt and they get the ball, they block a punt and get the ball inside the Ohio State 5 and then kick a field goal, and then it's 17-15 or something. I mean, it's a, yes, that's the face I made too on the inside. Yes. It's just your margin for error as Iowa. Like Iowa plays a just margin of error kind of football, and it's just, well, we're going to keep it close. Think of every Iowa-Nebraska game you've watched since Nebraska joined the conference, basically. It's just, well, we're going to punt it. We're going to keep it close. It's going to be 13-10 midway through the third quarter. And then the other team is going to make one more mistake than we do, and we're going to win 20-17. And it's going to happen every single year. That's Iowa football, and it works against a lot of the teams we see them play and a lot of teams that are on the schedule. And I feel like we talk about Minnesota this way, we talk about Wisconsin this way. Like, this is kind of the Big Ten West style of football, and it's just it's like battle of attrition. Who's going to make the one more mistake, and then they're going to lose the game. And if you can out execute the team that has not that much talent, then you can beat them just barely in a low-scoring gross game. That works until you're playing a team that has much better talent. And, Michigan won, and they didn't win by a ton, but also, I mean, Michigan, I don't know that Michigan had ever had a lead bigger than 2 scores in that game, and yet it never really felt like they were in any real danger. That's how this is going to feel, I feel like, on Saturday. Just, Ohio State will probably not be up by 45 points, but also I don't know that you're going to feel like they're in any real danger at any point from mid-second quarter on.
Yeah, we've seen like the 2007 Ohio State Michigan game where that was 14-3, and there was never in doubt. Iowa plays trestle ball, but they don't have Maurice Clarett, they don't have Ted Ginn, they don't have Santonio Holmes, they don't have Beanie Wells, they don't even have Boom Heron. Like they don't have any of these guys, and yet you played that game, and as you said, your margin of error is 0. At Ohio State, with trestle ball, the margin of error was also very small. They got very fortunate in 2002. They did not get as fortunate in 2003 when they didn't have as much offensive skill without Maurice Clarett there. But Tom, let's get to our predictions, because I have sent mine in. I'm assuming you sent yours, and you're a Wednesday sender-inner. I'm a Thursday sender-inner. I need the reminder. I went, and I know we kind of threw some numbers out previously. I don't know if we did that on the show or not. I went with 38-10. I feel like the scoring is going to be there. And 38 is like, that's 10 points below their average. And it's like, yeah, but 38 against Iowa is about 10 more than most anybody's going to get in the Big Ten, especially one where, I don't know that there's going to be 14 points scored in the fourth quarter type of thing. So I think Ohio State gets their points. They're patient enough, but I still think they're going to hit something, 1 or 2 plays to get some points in there.
Yeah, the last time we talked about this game, and I'm with you, I cannot remember if it was on the air or if we did it while we were, having lunch or something. But the last time we talked about this game, I said 31-6, and you said 31-7, and we had independently arrived at these scores. And so now you're saying 38-10. The score that I sent in was 38-6. I thought, well, no, Ohio State's certain to score maybe one more. They get a short field or something. So I think we talk too much about football and thus end up with, converging on exactly the same expected results for all of these games. So yeah, it's, this is just one where it's just, if it's 17-6 Ohio State at half, it's like, well, unless they fumble the ball into the end zone and then all, accidentally run away from the ball, to just let, a double-digit lead against Iowa is basically unblowable unless something really crazy happens or you hand them points via turnovers. So, yeah, I think 38-6, and everyone kind of walks out of the stadium and goes, well, that's over. On to Penn State. And that's I think, about the vibe you're going to have. And, then Penn State will be a little more interesting next week. Probably, hopefully.
We'll see. I was torn between like 6 points, 10 points, 13 points, 9 points. I think giving them a touchdown, I don't know how they're going to get it, but these things just tend to happen. But anything else, Tom, that you want to discuss?
I have 2 words for you, Tony. 5 safeties. I'm just saying, think about it.
I've thought about it, and I don't think it's going to happen. Now, is that 5 kneel downs in the end zone, like in the final quarter, where it's like an Australian has punted you to the 1 as you're down 38-0, and then you punt him to the 1, you take a knee in the end zone, so it's 38-2. And then what? A free kick at that point, pin you at the 1 again, and then it's like, no, because Ohio State will be doing the free kicking. Tom, we can figure this out. But not right now. The show is over. Let's just go. This is enough Iowa. This is so much Iowa. So much Iowa. But that will do it for this episode. Join us. Are we doing a live show Friday? Perhaps. Are we talking more about Iowa? Perhaps. Are we definitely doing a pregame show Saturday morning? Of course. More Iowa there. That's going to be fantastic. And I'm not saying that ironically. I mean, it'll be a good show. It's going to be a lot of Iowa, and maybe we'll talk more Ohio State, because what we didn't even talk about is Travion Henderson being back, Mayan Williams being back, Jackson Smith and Jigba likely being back. So we've got more to talk about on the Ohio State end. It's so difficult not to talk about the thud of Iowa's offense. And so we'll be done with that soon, and we'll latch on to something sparkly on Ohio State side, I promise. So that will do it for this episode. Reminder, check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member. Hit us up on the Huddle forum there. You can also find us at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.